Nigel Farage.
I am the most controversial person in modern times.
Reform UK is about to become a political phenomenon.
No one in the Conservative Party even tries. Corrupt as hell. It's an outrage.
Something is happening out there.
First they ignore you.
Who are you?
Then they laugh at you.
You all laughed at me.
Then they attack you.
This now amounts to election interference.
And then you win.
We're 4 way ahead here.
We are now clearly the challengers to Labour.
We've got momentum.
I'm black. I'm Asian. I'm gay. We've got to get away from all of that. Oh my God, he's against black people. He's against immigrants. For all of these things, I will not be forgiven by a certain segment of the population. But you know what? I couldn't care less. Illegal immigration. These are population rises, the likes of which we've literally never seen.
What would you do if I gave you all the power in the world to fix immigration? What would you do?
But I don't think you should give me all the power in the world.
Let's just say that
Our country is in decline.
The whole of the Western world's in trouble as we argue and fight over whether a woman can have a penis or not. What do you think our enemies think? Or the Chinese think? Or Putin thinks? They're laughing at us. And the West's in danger of falling. Not because of the outside military threat, because of the lunacy that's happening within. It's an outrage.
And will that ever change? Will we ever see...
No. It's going to change. It's not working.
Thank you very much for letting us film in your place. When we were booking this podcast, we had such an issue finding a location because everyone was saying, no, we can't have Nigel Farage in the building because we disagree with his views. Why do you think that is? Why do so many people disagree with you?
They don't. It's the London wokerati. London is a different country. London is a foreign country in absolutely every way. It's become so politically correct. Oh, Nigel Farage, oh God, we can't possibly have him. You go outside of London, I'm like a blooming hero. I mean, I can't walk into a pub in the north of England and buy a drink because people queue up to buy drinks for me. So you've got two very different countries.
I've got to say I was shocked that one of the places that I reached out to, they said, we prefer to just be a vanilla backdrop for, little shoots like that. They didn't want anything to do with this type of thing. I couldn't believe it. You were saying that we couldn't believe how politically divided the world actually was until we tried to do something like this. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And of course, I am the most controversial person in modern times because I dared to take on an establishment view. Back in 1972, the British establishment took a view that the European Union, i.e. globalism, was our future. And I was the first person to come along and effectively challenge that. And not just challenge it, but beat it. They've never forgiven me for it, and they never, ever will. And their level of intolerance, their level of loathing of me, for people that call themselves liberals, and we're so lovely, darling, and we're so good. I mean, they are the most intolerant people of all art. Mercifully, there is still a majority in this country for common sense. You just don't find it in central London.
What would you say some of your most controversial opinions are, if you had to sum them up?
Oh, I'm a total extremist. I believe in self-government. I believe in democratic rule. I believe that nations that don't have borders aren't nations. I believe that the power of the big corporates is crushing the ability of men and women to set up their own industries and get on well. I mean, how's any of this extreme? I mean, when you actually look at what I've stood for and what I've said over the years, you couldn't brand any of it extreme. Now, where you might get me is perhaps once or twice I've put the whole thing a bit theatrically. I mean, I'll confess to that. So they might not like my style, and they might not like, and particularly with the European commissioners and the stuff I did in the European Parliament and the stuff I might have done on Question Time or whatever it is, they might have seen me as being very combative, but actually all I was doing was taking the piss out of them.
Is that required in order to get your message across, in order to be at least heard? You have to kind of hype it up a little bit and almost purposely annoy people.
Do you know, when you're taking on, I mean, don't forget, I was this big. I was this big for a very, very long time. I mean, talk about David v. Goliath. The thing that really worked for me was if people saw what I said and they could agree with it or disagree with it, but if it made them smile. And humour is the most extraordinary weapon. It cuts through. You think about what mates send you on your phone. What do you forward? Funny stuff.
Yeah.
What do you forward? Stuff that really is out of the box. What do you forward? Stuff that shocks you. So if you can get all of those things together, then it actually works. And so for me, Gandhi in his campaign for Indian separation and independence from the UK said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, and then you win. Well, that charts my story pretty effectively. So yeah, I was very theatrical. I did take the piss out of them. I was I rude? Not in terms of being abusive or threatening, but I think they found me intimidating because they couldn't buy me off, they couldn't bribe me, they couldn't silence me. And so for all of these things, I will not be forgiven by a certain segment of the population. But you know what? I couldn't care less.
How do you think social media platforms can balance like extremist views versus having freedom of speech?
I once had a Twitter suspension for posting something that was true.
I suppose now you wouldn't get that with Elon Musk in charge.
Well, that would help. I mean, he does call himself a free speech absolutist.
What did you post out of interest that got you shut down?
I posted that in Dover docks this morning, there was a medical shutdown because people who'd come in from France in dinghies had brought COVID with them. And some of them were very sick. And that was under Twitter's rules, seemed to be ascribing diseases to a certain racial group.
Right.
That wasn't just a pure statement of fact. There were people coming on the boats like this with COVID, and they shut down the Western docks. Look, you know what? All these things are about balance. All these things are about judgment. All these things are about saying what you can say, but knowing what is beyond the bounds of what is reasonable.
How do we know where that line is, though? Because, like you say, in London, you're way past that line.
Well,
but in the country,
It's becoming increasingly difficult to judge that line.
Well, no, it is difficult, and it's subjective. It's subjective, but it's about judgment. All these things are about judgment. There is an irony here, isn't there? I mean, my entire career was really built around YouTube. It was my speeches in the European Parliament from about 2007-8 that just took off on YouTube. This sort of, as it seemed brand new phenomenon that had occurred. And suddenly, huge numbers of people were watching what I was doing all over the world.
Yeah, I remember even my mates in school were talking about you. So you're quite a hero in the school.
Yeah, you have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. I mean, it wasn't abusive or rude. I was taking the mickey, as I said to you earlier in this podcast conversation. So YouTube made me, Twitter made Trump, and then after 2016, they all panicked. What have we done? We've created a tool for free speech. This doesn't fit with our model. And then we saw the most incredible censorship coming in, Facebook being the worst.
It does seem like you have really utilized social media and these platforms more than probably anyone in the political sphere. That's obviously intentional, and you're very good at getting that virality. Why is no one else thinking, hang on a minute, there's a load of young people here that don't care about politics, that don't even know who I am. Why are they not using it or following in your footsteps?
Just to preface that, Donald Trump is doing that so well at the moment in America. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Nelk Boys, but they have a huge audience in America.
Podcast.
Yeah, the Full
I
Send
know,
podcast.
I know.
Him, Dana White, Donald Trump, they're all in it together, and the message is so wide to them youngsters.
Yeah, well,
and I don't see anyone in the UK doing that.
Well, Donald is just so great. Donald gets it. I got it years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not myself particularly technical, but I could see here was this new medium of reaching people. So I've worked incredibly hard at it, employed people to come and help me do it. To be honest, I couldn't do it on my own. I can't do everything on my own. I saw it very early. It's astonishing. Your question.
Yeah.
It is astonishing that these career politicians in Westminster don't see it. You know why? They see nothing. Without the first past the post electoral system, without being part of the Labour or Tory party, none of them would even exist. They are lazy. They do not have an entrepreneurial brain in their body. They just go with the system. And the best example is TikTok, really. Now, look, I've got reservations about TikTok, about the ownership of TikTok, but we have to accept that for a huge number of people kind of 8-10 years younger than you guys, TikTok has been where they see stuff. TikTok has been where they form their opinions. Apart from Grant Shapps, who used to masquerade as Simon Green, when he went to conferences to try and do business, and is just about the most useless cabinet minister in modern history, who plays around at it with 50,000 followers. No one in the Conservative Party even tries.
Do you think if politicians did engage that under 25-year-old demographic, it would make a difference? Because Kai, for example, has never voted. But maybe if more people voted, would it make a difference?
What I don't like is that I can't vote for a person. I hate how I'm voting for a party. Like if I could just vote for Trump, let's say, I would do that.
Well, actually, you are voting for an MP in your constituency.
But then they're just switching out.
I know. It's a very, in America, it's a presidential system. It's Trump v. Sleepy Joe. In theory, we vote for MPs for constituencies. In practice, we don't. In practice, we have a quasi-presidential system imposed upon a parliamentary system. We're in a very odd place. And I mean, look, guys, when it comes to this, I am the ultimate radical. I was a radical in the sense of leaving the European Union. I now think our electoral system is not fit for purpose. I think it might have suited 120 years ago. I think the first past the post thing is hopeless now. I think we have to have a degree of proportionality in how we vote. How could I get 4 million votes in 2015 and one seat? Come on. Give me a break. There should be a bit more fairness than that.
And I guess people aren't voting for you as well because they're worried about Labour getting in.
Well,
a vote for you is maybe taking it away from the Conservatives.
The fact that I got 4 million votes under this system showed you what the well of support for me genuinely was. House of Lords, stuff with mates of Tony Blair and David Cameron, half of them party donors, peerages given out as favours, peerages given out to buy off opponents. The whole thing's corrupt as hell. Corrupt as hell. It's an outrage, that we've got this system. And nearly all of them live in the same 3 postcodes in West London.
And will that ever change? Will we ever see...
No. It's going to change.
Okay.
It's going to change. It has to change.
How?
It's not working. Look, I was asked that question about leaving the European Union. Nigel, it's for the birds. You're wasting your time. You know what? We did it. We will have electoral reform. I think voters need to vote with their feet. We need to start voting for parties, for candidates that want this genuine radical change. I'm not suggesting it'll happen overnight, but it will happen. I also think what the referendum in 2016 showed us is that despite the fact that in Westminster and in mainstream media, it was wall-to-wall Remain, the vote was Leave. They told us that we'd lose our house, lose our jobs and get gonorrhea. I'm not joking. This is what we were told because the drug that combated super gonorrhea came in from Germany and therefore we wouldn't get it if we allowed it. Despite all of this, we still voted Leave. So the other thing that I think is really interesting is to look at Switzerland, and this would engage you directly. So in Switzerland, the citizens have the right to call a referendum on any issue they choose, and it's legally binding. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should vote every Thursday, but occasionally there come along really big issues where Westminster is out of touch with the country. I think we need to have a right to call a legally binding referendum on those issues as and when. Then you'd vote. Then you'd vote.
What do you think about this? So I was having a conversation with some people the other day about me not voting, and I asked them if they vote. And their response was, and I think this comes from the rise of Andrew Tate and people like that, about the puppet masters, the people behind the scenes that call the shots. And they say, why would I vote when whoever I vote for, it doesn't matter because they're not making the decisions anyway. It's the puppet masters behind the scene doing it. As someone that's actually connected and understands this world much more than any person on TikTok chatting shit, what would you say to that?
Well, Brexit was part of that. Brexit was part of that direct accountability coming back to voters. Now, that process is not yet completed because we still have a court in Strasbourg that can overrule immigration decisions. We still have the United Nations increasingly pulling it. So, I suppose, in a sense, it's globalism versus nationalism. Now, nationalism is a word that can get misconstrued. But I do think the more our vote directly changes things as opposed to decisions that are being taken in Washington or Brussels or wherever else it may be, the more inclined people will be to vote. So I get the argument. They're all the same. Not much changes. Big decisions get taken elsewhere. What was it? A friend of mine said that they're both different cheeks of the same backside and all that sort of thing. Can't put a cigarette paper between. I get all that. But I think Brexit was the beginning of a process that says that decision making should come back to us, the people. And you know what? I was in Iowa the other day, Midwest, brutal, minus 28 one night. It was absolutely brutal. And there you had a primary, and a primary for the Republican Party as to who's going to be the Republican Party candidate. 2/3 of the elected state representatives backed Ron DeSantis. The big money backed Nikki Haley. And do you know what? They turned up in their 4x4s. I went to a gymnasium of a school, little town just outside Des Moines in Iowa. They turned up in their 4x4s and voted for Donald Trump. And Trump won it. So, in a sense, the American system is more open to what you would like, the ability of being able to vote for a person, than the current system.
I do think that is much better. So just to touch on something that you just mentioned, so Brexit, now that the dust has settled and some time has gone by, how do you feel about it upon reflection?
Oh, the right thing to do, undoubtedly. I mean, no question about that. And I think we stand taller in the world as a result of it in terms of foreign policy, how people treat us. I think the nuclear submarine deal with Australia being a very good example of what we can do. And we can mirror trade deals and do better and all of that. Brexit gave us the ability to be back in control of our own country, but it also gave us the ability to mismanage our own lives as well as manage our own lives well. And sadly, this Conservative government has been an absolute balls of it. And the two basic promises that were made that we could have expected to be delivered, one, lower numbers coming into Britain, well, forget it. It's record numbers coming in. I mean, for a minute, forget the boats. Net migration of 745,000. Think of the impact on your generation. When are you buying a house? When are you buying a house? When are you buying a house? I mean,
it's not even on my mind.
No, I know. And yet when I was your age,
yeah,
I'd bought my first house. I was thinking about gearing up because it was possible.
I'm not saying it's a good thing that it's not on my mind. It's a bad thing.
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
No, it's a terrible thing. You're the first generation. You're the first generation in peacetime not to be able to aspire to what your parents and grandparents were able to aspire to. And what I'm saying to you is this: the elephant in the room is the exploding population, right? Think about this. Blair comes to power back in 97. I know to you that sounds like ancient history, but in relative terms, it's not, all right? Blair comes to power in 97. The population's 58 million. It's now 68 million. And nearly 90% of that rise is because of immigration. The projections are we'll hit 70 million by 2026 and 74 million by 2035. Now, these are population rises, the likes of which we've literally never, ever seen. Even if we met the most optimistic government target, which we won't, of building 300,000 houses a year, new houses, it doesn't even cover the people coming in, let alone you lot, who haven't got the chance to catch up. And so I believe that the elephant in the room today is this massive population explosion that is going on. And this is not to say, and this is where the lovies who won't allow me to do a podcast, oh my God, he's against black people, he's against immigrants. It's nothing to do with that. These are common sense arguments actually shared by large numbers of the settled ethnic communities that live in this country. We literally cannot go on like this.
Yeah, so it's not immigration is the problem; it's the control of immigration.
Immigration.
That can be good.
We've always had people coming and going out of the country, for goodness' sake. We've always had that,
and we do need skilled workers coming in because they add something.
Well,
to the country.
We ought to be training more of our own.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, think about this in context, right? And this subject really is important, and I want people to think about it rationally, not just emotionally. From Windrush until the end of the 1990s, 50-year period, right? Net migration to Britain was 30,000 people a year. For the last decade, it's been over 300,000, and last year, 750,000. You want a doctor's appointment? Forget it.
It's crazy.
You want a house? Forget it. You want to drive up to Liverpool on a Saturday morning to watch the football? Forget it. We literally cannot cope with a population explosion on this scale. We haven't got the infrastructure, we haven't got the money, we haven't got the means, and the idea that it's good for the economy is cobblers.
So why does the current government not do anything about it then?
Scared. Fear.
Of public reaction?
Fear. Oh, they'll be called racist. They'll be called ghastly. They'll be called small-minded. They'll be condemned by the United Nations, by people in Brussels, by everybody apart from Donald Trump. They will be condemned.
So why can Australia do it though? They've got like a point-based system that we could have here, right?
Well, Australia have had a points-based system that I advocated for many, many years. With Brexit, we had the points-based system. We just lowered the criteria. I mean, the whole thing was incredible. We became an open door for unskilled people, not just from Europe, but from the whole of the rest of the world. I mean, we've mismanaged this through weakness, through fear. You're quite right. Tony Abbott was the Australian Prime Minister 10 years ago. He literally took the migrant boats and towed them back to Indonesia.
What would you do? If I gave you all the power in the world to fix immigration, what would you do?
Well, I don't think you should give me all the power in the world.
Let's just say that I did. I'm feeling generous today. Let's just say that I did.
I think power with a degree of accountability. Look, I mean, frankly, illegal immigration. Nobody that ever came across the channel in a dinghy by paying a trafficker would ever have the right to settle refugee status. End of. End of. You will never, ever be given legal right to remain. That cannot happen. I think the whole Human Rights Act has become a criminal's charter. It defies common sense. I mean, this bloke, this alkali attacker from Clapham, can you believe it? I mean, twice he was rejected for asylum. Then he commits 2 serious sex offences, then says, I've converted to Christianity, is allowed to stay and commits that atrocity. Now, okay, that's one bad dude. But the fact the system let him do that, there was a vicar, a Baptist minister in South Wales over the weekend, said he's baptised 500 Muslim asylum seekers into Christianity. Says 60% of them he never saw again. I mean, we're allowing ourselves, through weakness, to have the mickey taken out of us. And that threatens the integrity of our society and our community. As I say, I've made these arguments, guys, for years. I'm condemned for doing them. I'm told my motives for doing them are wrong. They're not. My motives for doing them are, I want us to have a settled sense of community in this country. Yes, we can add to it. Yes, of course, we enjoy diversity in a sense of different meals and different people and all the rest of it. But if we as a nation don't get a grip of this subject, we're sunk.
So what does the future hold on that note? If healthcare keeps getting busier and the housing crisis increases, at what point does that stop? Does it stop? Where do you see us ending up?
Well, we have to get a different government. We have to have political transformation that gets a grip on this. If we don't, then I think the quality of life of all of us will diminish. And I suspect that people will respect the democratic process even less than they do now and start to take matters into their own hands.
And what does that look like?
Ugly. The thing about democracy is this, and the reason I want to encourage all of you to believe in democracy is this. We may not like the fact that Labour have won or Tories have won, but we say to ourselves, you know what? It was a fair fight. The other side won. I'll do all I can to help my gang win next time round. It's the safety valve. If you take away democracy, if you believe that voting doesn't matter, and if you can't change things through voting, well, then you want to change things through what? Violence. Right? Democracy is the way you stop people achieving change through violence. And violence leads to bloodshed and misery and loss and all of those things. And I really don't think this is being taught at schools. How important democracy is for us in Western Christian-based cultures.
Well, because no one loses now. No one's learning there's losers and there's winners.
I know.
There's all of these participation awards.
But I mean, this concept of freedom of speech, this concept of the nation state, this concept of democratic self-government, these were things that mattered to just a couple of generations before us sitting here, that twice we went to war to defend those principles at absolutely massive, catastrophic cost.
Why are these principles not being taught to young people?
I think we've lost our way. I think the educational establishment no longer knows what it's there to do. I also think, and it's quite funny really, that when you have things that are of great value, unless they're threatened, you don't realize how important they are. It's quite funny. The idea that the Kaiser or Hitler might march into the country and take away our freedoms maybe sharpened people's minds and people's focus as to what happened. And because we've all lived, and yes, of course, we've had British soldiers killed and maimed in Afghanistan and Northern Ireland and all the rest of it. But there's been no direct threat to us now, for getting on for 80 years. These freedoms aren't valued as much as they were because they've not been threatened.
Yeah, I think making it harder for people to come into the UK would actually make us value the UK more, because like in America, they have so much patriotism and all of that stuff. And then in Australia, they're proud of their countries and it's seen as an achievement to actually get in and get a job over there. So maybe by having this harder system to get in, we would have that spirit
Well,
again.
I would like to think that, the British passport should be a very important prize, not something dished out like confetti. And I think that is very, very important. And, values matter. Community matters. Family matters. Community matters. Country matters. These are blocks and units that have been shown through human evolution to have value. Things that we are prepared to stand up and fight for. And there is an extreme left-wing Marxist attempt, which has infiltrated much of our education system, to tell us that family doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And, all the evidence is this. And, we all live imperfect lives and divorces and things that happen. But all the evidence is that if you have kids that are brought up by a man and a woman living together in marriage, their life chances are much, much better than those that don't. And it's just as simple as that, And as I say, none of us live perfect lives. But the idea that we denigrate the family, the idea that we denigrate the sense of community. Oh no, your community is not diverse enough. Well, do you know what? If it works and people care for each other, isn't that what really matters, rather than tokenism to what gender number we've got, or what racial number we've got, or what sexual preference number we've got, or all of those things. And country matters. Country matters. That's why all over the world, big countries are breaking up into small countries, because people want the right to feel this is their identity, this is their flag, this is what they belong to. And this is all under attack from the Marxist establishment. That's why it's not being taught at school.
Something that really frustrates me is with like the Hollywood system and how they're hiring people coming in, writers that don't necessarily have the skills to write the Hollywood blockbusters, but they're in there because they're diverse and they're ticking boxes. And it's happening across all of society. I know that films are the least of our concerns because it's happening in the banking systems. And I know you've faced lots of issues with banks recently. But do you think we're actually moving away from equality? Because it's not a quality of meritocracy, is it? It's to do with ticking a box at the end of the day.
I have a dream, Martin Luther King said. Possibly one of the greatest, if you haven't heard his speeches, you should. I'm sure you have, but you should. And I'd urge the audience, Google Martin Luther King, have a look. His oratory was so good, it was almost like singing. I have a dream that one day my 4 children will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Right? So I grew up in the 1980s, when I was a young adult, in the 1980s, when Margaret Thatcher believed that it didn't matter whether you were Jewish, whether you were Christian, whether you were Asian, black, whatever. Didn't matter whether you'd been to university and got a degree. Didn't matter whether you were humble, working class, or aristocratic. You got on according to ability, hard work, honesty, and decency. This was a meritocratic society where people were able to move and advance and get on. And we're now chucking all that out of the window with this idea of rights. I'm black, I'm Asian, I'm gay, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other. We must have quotas. The banking sector, now full of idiots. Full of idiots. People promoted not on ability, but on ethnicity. We've got to get away, or gender, or whatever it may be. We've got to get away from all of that, or we're never going to achieve our goals as a country. And, the white male, you lot, are going to feel that the world's against you. And Andrew Tate tapped into that. Andrew Tate tapped into that. You're going to feel the world's against you. You're going to feel resentful. You're going to feel angry rather than being optimistic and hopeful for the future. These are massive cultural battles. And I'm not pretending that I can wave a magic wand or anybody else can. But I think before you can solve a problem, I think you first need to identify what it is. And I believe that's what it is.
To look at the other side of that, if we're not hiring people from different diverse groups, do we then end up with a society that is ultimately controlled by one type of person?
No.
Which then affects, the young people in those diverse groups, which won't have as much opportunity later down the line?
It is possible that certain diverse groups through culture will do better than others.
Yeah.
Look, let's be frank about this. If you grow up in this country in a Hindu family, the chances of marital breakdown are very small. The chances of educational encouragement are incredibly high. The culture within that family and community, that hard work, achievement is everything in your life, is at a different level to the rest of us. It's just a fact. And there are other community groups who would place different priorities. But I'm going to pick out a positive, not a negative example. Because if I pick out a negative one, they'll all scream at me and say I'm ghastly. So there is no doubt that if you're born a young Hindu male or female today, your chances of success, age 25, 30, are far greater than if you're born to a white working class family on a council estate in the north of England. And much of that is cultural. So why do we need quotas? Things have to sort themselves out. The biggest divide in Britain is not through races or sexuality or gender. The biggest divide in Britain and the biggest prejudice in Britain is class. And the ruling London classes, the people that wouldn't have us for this podcast, loathe the working classes. They despise the working classes. How many working class people in Parliament are there? How many working class accents do you hear in Parliament? Almost none. That's the big divide in this country. The absolute snobbery and, frankly, sheer hypocrisy of our ruling classes. They go on about diversity and this and that and the other, but if you're white working class, you can go to hell.
So do you think they've broken people down into these different groups to stop the working class becoming so powerful because they're in their little groups, can I say it, the gays, the blacks? Well, I don't even know what I can say nowadays because I don't want to offend anyone, but that's the problem, isn't it?
I tell you what, do you know what we ought to do? Do you know what we really ought to do? Let's start treating them all as human beings.
Yeah.
All right, they're all human beings, and we'll treat everybody equally, provided they're fair with us. And if they're not fair with us, we will discriminate against them on the basis of their behaviour, regardless of what their background is. We all discriminate. We discriminate when we choose friends. Let's treat everybody as equal. If we don't have a colourblind approach, given the ethnic change in this country, we are headed for the most horrific divisions. And I think we're beginning to see it already over Israel, Gaza, the street protests. I'm very, very worried about these divisions. I really am.
The way we speak about the UK, especially in this podcast, makes it seem like quite a murky place, and the future of it is certainly uncertain and a little bit murky as well. Are there any other countries or societies out there that are doing it right, in your opinion?
The whole of the West's in trouble. The whole of the Western world's in trouble. As we argue and fight over whether a woman can have a penis or not, as we battle over these things and argue in Parliament over these things, what do you think our enemies think? What do you think the Iranians think, or the Chinese think, or Putin thinks? They're laughing at us. They're laughing at us. And great civilizations are brought down, not normally through invasion. They're brought down through internal division. You can go back millennia to see great empires that fell. And the West's in danger of falling, not because of the outside military threat, because of the lunacy that's happening within. But I remain an optimist. I believe that if you study history, social pendulums swing one way and then can swing another. And I am seeing much greater hope in this 15 to 25, roughly, age group than I see in my 25s to 35s. I'm beginning to see young people actually getting it, understanding that this stuff isn't working. So I've far from given up on these great battles. I'm worried and concerned for the future, but we can turn this around. But we need engagement.
If you could click your fingers tomorrow and become Prime Minister, what's the first thing that you would focus on?
Having an enormous party to celebrate.
Can we come?
Well, you all come, of course you can.
I think we could have a good time if we partnered with you. I think he likes a good time. I can
Yeah,
tell.
I do.
Yeah, I can tell.
We've seen the wine fridge, so
Yeah.
Listen, guys, I've lived a bit. Don't worry about that. But then, but again, that's about balance, isn't it? You've got to enjoy yourself and live life, but not ruin yourself. It's all about balance, all of it. I mean, look, if I became Prime Minister tomorrow, what are the things we need to do? Fix the borders, give people hope, help small business.
this is a lot to do with a hangover.
Well, I don't get hangovers.
Okay, you can manage it.
I know where the line is. you see.
Okay.
When you get older, don't worry, you'll get there. Yeah, there are there are a huge number of things to do, but it's about, I think, the early days of a new premiership, the early days of a political revolution is about signals, big signals. Where are we going? I remember, and I tell you what, we've been through a lot of content today, but remember this. You at a personal level can only have the good things in life if you're successful, have enough money in your pocket, all right? If you think when you're older, you're going to get an old age pension, you guys, it's for the birds, right? If you think in the short term, all the free healthcare you need is going to be on tap without massive waits, forget it. So, I mean, there's never been a time when I would say to young people, being successful and making a few quid genuinely is what you need to make your lives better. I think now is the moment where that is perhaps more pertinent than ever. And on a national level, a similar thing applies. Our national debt, which was $1 trillion 15 years ago, is now 2.8 trillion. Our annual debt repayments are 110 billion, like after Social Security and health, right up there as the biggest items in our expenditure. We only get out of this poverty trap where in relative terms we get poorer every year, nationally and individually. Yes, some will do well, of course, but nationally and individually, we have to grow our way out of this mess. And you grow your way out of this mess through invention, through entrepreneurship, and through hard work. And when you have 5.4 million people of working age not working, living on Social Security, claiming disability benefit. Yes, of course, some are entitled, but many aren't. These are the cultural changes that we need. And this is what in the 80s I saw, and it sounds like ancient history to you lot, but literally in the 80s we saw a country working harder, making more money, doing well. Money can't buy you happiness, but a lack of money can make you very miserable.
On the topic of money, Starbucks has recently said they're not taking cash anymore. What's your thoughts on this whole cashless society and how it's going to control us in the future?
I'll be boycotting Starbucks.
I mean, they've done a lot of other things as well. That's worth boycotting them.
Well, I can't bear.
Will there come a point where everyone's introducing that sort of those rules? You can't live life boycotting everything.
Well, they'd like to, but no, the cashless society should be for. Because if they control our cash, they can control how we spend anything.
How will the drug dealers cope if there's no cash?
Oh, crypto. Or whatever it might be.
True.
Probably on a phone, no, but that's the point.
But you can't even buy crypto now.
That's true. So they won't be doing that.
No. If you've got a NatWest account, you ought to buy crypto, they'll close you down.
Yeah, Starling Bank as well. They closed my account for that.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
No. We're heading in the wrong direction. Central bank digital currencies, this must all be resisted. And it can be beaten, actually. It can be beaten. I mean, I think I did more to highlight the worries of where banking is going than anybody in modern times. We've been promised by government lots of reforms on the back of the Farage debanking scandal. Will they actually happen? I'm waiting and watching.
So do you think it's a good idea for people our age to be investing in crypto like Bitcoin and Ethereum because of the decentralized nature of those coins?
I think I have to be careful about giving investment advice.
Yeah.
I've got to be very careful about that. But I think that assets that are liquid in the sense that you can redeem them, assets that are outside the control of big banks and big government are good investments. And I think there are in various currencies and coins, ways you can do that.
What does your investment portfolio look like? And I'm obviously not asking for numbers, but in terms of split between industries or...
I've been involved with an investment company for the last couple of years, and whilst I'm not licensed to give direct investment advice, and therefore I'm being cautious, the people that I worked with 2.5 years ago suggested that 25% of anyone's portfolio should be in gold. 25% in gold.
Of anyone's, depending on age or anyone, any age?
Of anyone's. It's gone up 8% every year for the last goodness knows how many years. It's just not sexy. It's not like Bitcoin, that goes up to 68,000, down to 13, and is now 45, or whatever it is. I mean, some would say you may as well put a bet on the 230 at Kempton. But it's not quite like that. So we've been advising big chunk in gold, store of value, but also it has been it can go down, but it can't go bust.
Because you've always got it there, yeah.
You've actually got something.
And you're talking physical gold here.
Physical gold.
Yeah,
absolutely physical gold. Absolutely. And in terms of crypto, we have absolutely recommended some exposure to crypto as well. Yeah, absolutely. So that's the advice of people I've been working with. And as I say, I have to be slightly guarded on this.
Moving on to Donald Trump quickly. I know that you're friends with him. Would you say you're friends with Donald Trump?
Oh, very much so.
What is he like behind the scenes, off camera? Is he the same kind of character?
Larger than life. Absolutely larger than life. Energetic beyond belief. Huge fun. Very funny. Very, very fun.
And
very, very fun.
Do you think that he would get re-elected in the future if he gets through these trials? That he's going
he
through
will be elected. He is going to be the 47th president of the USA. Be in no doubt.
I think so.
And I'll be there going, woo. No, what do you mean? It's a bit like me, isn't it? You might not like Trump's style, but actually he's been really right on big things. He woke the world up to the threat that China posed. He physically walked into North Korea to attempt to negotiate peace. He put together the Abraham Accords, where Israel and Arab states were signing up cooperation pacts. His foreign policy successes were amazing. Do you know, I was with him on the 29th of February 2020. I was behind a curtain backstage as he was about to go on in Maryland, just outside Washington. I thought for all the world he'd win 40 states. And then COVID hit. The economy was going so well. Cab drivers in DC and New York were telling me, oh man, it's so great. It was really going well. And COVID knackered it. He'll win again. No, he is a friend of mine. He's outrageous fun to be with.
Do you think something dodgy went on with those votes, though?
Look, any system that relies on mass mail-out voting is always open to intimidation and fraud. To say it's a stolen election may be a bit too much, but I've seen abuses in this country as well. I believe the only way to vote and trust the integrity of the system, therefore to avoid the threat of violence, is to do what the French do. You can have a postal vote if you're working overseas or age 97 in a wheelchair. That postal vote should account to about 2.5% of the total vote, as it was here years ago. Otherwise, you turn up, you show ID, you're given a piece of paper, you go into the privacy of a polling booth, you put a cross and put it in a box. That is never open to question.
How about a digital system, though? Because I reckon that would get a lot more young people interested.
No. Who can trust that? Who'll run the digital system? You want to vote? Participate in a democracy, you turn up.
I'd just be worried about the people handling the boxes. What are they voting? I suppose they don't know what you voted for and it's all, behind closed doors.
Well, the boxes, but here's the point. The boxes are sealed.
Yeah.
With physical ballots, the boxes are sealed. They then are all taken to a central location at which they're unlocked. They're then chucked on a table like this, turned over and put onto piles with observers around the table watching on.
It just seems quite archaic to do it that way.
Good. If it
so
works,
I suppose it's good because it can't be
If
hacked.
it works, it works.
Yeah.
Why have any system if we believe the contention that I put to you earlier, that democracy is good because it takes away the urge towards violence, then let's use something that works, can be trusted and can be seen.
Yeah.
What's something about Donald Trump that the world may not know from your experience being with him?
I wouldn't tell you. And the reason we've been friends for so long is because I keep absolute confidence with him. And I've never said in public anything he said to me in private. And you know something? The higher you go in life, the more discretion matters. The more who can I talk to that won't sell a story to the newspapers? Who can I talk to that won't try and do a deal off the back of me? And so with Trump from day one, I've always kept absolutely to this, that any conversation we've had, and I've sat in the Oval Office with him and other places, I keep it absolutely confidential. I think the one thing people would be surprised by with him, to sort of answer your question in a slightly different way, if I may, is just how good with people he is. He's utterly charming. He makes people feel $1 million. He goes out of his way to make people feel really, really special and make their day, make their life. It is a salesmanship-like level of charm that to see it up close is quite amazing.
How did you meet Trump?
He reached out to me a long, long time ago. I think the truth of it is my speeches in the European Parliament. I think that was what woke up Donald Trump to who I was. Obviously, I knew he was because he'd been a huge figure, forever. But that was, I think the answer is YouTube. There you go.
Yeah, obviously Donald Trump's rise was through reality TV.
Yeah.
And you've recently gone on a big reality TV show in the UK. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So you like my segue there?
Yeah.
Very good.
How did you find that experience and how did it change your public image?
Physically very tough. I mean, I was the oldest by miles in there. They were all your age, just about. And it's tough. You're sleeping on hard beds. I was in there 23 nights. You're carrying up buckets of water and firewood, and even to do the trials, you had to cross these rope bridges. And so physically it was tough. And I've been through a bit in my life. I've had neck reconstructions and plane accidents and goodness knows what else. Physically very tough. Mentally I was fine. And actually, it's interesting, with all these big physical challenges in life, they're all more mental than physical. In an odd sort of way.
I didn't watch it to support you because who was that person that I just couldn't stand?
The YouTuber,
I literally watched half of an episode and I was like, no, I cannot watch it anymore. I don't care who is on it.
I had to live there.
Yeah, I was like, I don't care who is on it, who I want to support. I cannot watch this show.
It was hard work. Some of it was hard work.
It was hard work to bloody watch.
But I got through it. I mean, the snake trial was the hardest. I mean, goodness me, you're 6-8 feet below ground, strapped in. You got 20 snakes poured on top of you, and they were big ones.
Why did you decide to do it this year? Because I imagine you've been asked a lot of years in the past.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every year since 2016. 3 reasons. One, thinking a lot of young people out there, a lot of TikToker types out there, and I had a lot of TikTok success at the end of last year. Huge numbers of views, etc. A lot of them would have been 11 or 12 when the referendum happened, wouldn't know who I was, chance to meet a younger audience. Secondly, a chance to detoxify with some people who hate me because of what they read about me in the Times, and maybe say, well, you know what, actually, he's not the devil. And thirdly, big check. So what's not to like?
How do you think that the public's perception of you changed since going in the jungle?
Does it humanize you a bit?
I think it's made a huge difference. I think that second point about detoxifications worked. I think the debanking thing did as well, actually. The classic email from debanking was, "Dear Mr. Farage, I don't normally agree with you, but." So you're beginning to break through. And amongst the youth, it's incredible. Everywhere I go, young people running up. I'm Nige now.
Uncle Nige. That's sick. How does it work in terms of payment structure for when you're going on that show? You're getting it all up front. Is it released in stages?
You've got to get. You can't just turn up and say, "Cheers, guys."
Yeah,
I got the check.
I would have thought so. But
no, you get paid in various stages. So
you all paid up.
So yeah,
nice.
No, good gig.
Yeah, not too long then. Yeah.
Good gig. I mean, I gave up a lot of income to do politics. I had a successful career, had my own company. I gave it all up to do politics. It cost me a huge amount of money to follow my dream, to do what I wanted to do. As I said to you on this podcast earlier, money doesn't make you happy. Having no money makes you very unhappy. I never had no money because I always had a reasonable income, but I gave up a heck of a lot to do what I did. But it's about priorities.
And isn't it interesting how there was almost a negative perception in the media of, oh, Nigel's getting paid this much, it's awful.
Oh, it's
when,
so dumb.
at the end of the day, it's media, you've got an audience, you're bringing eyeballs, that's how business works.
Huge numbers of people watch that show who'd never watched it before because I was on it. Look, anything I do will be subject to debate, to controversy. That's fine. I've lived with it for a very, very long time. It doesn't matter. None of it. Yeah, it's tomorrow's fish and chip newspaper. It just doesn't matter.
But even aside from just yourself personally, that is another problem that I see in the UK is that money is demonized and it's not celebrated. Oh, well done. This man's built an audience. He's bringing eyeballs and he's on an entertainment show. But that goes across the board for people making money in entrepreneurship and, in general.
It's very odd. In America, success is celebrated.
Yes, yeah, they love it.
In America, you're a winner. You're a great guy. In this country, you're built up to be knocked down. It's part of our culture, I'm afraid. There is a bit of cynicism in our national character. Just have to live with it.
Yeah.
Can't change it.
So you say that you left a lot of money on the table to go into politics. So therefore that would give the impression that, politicians don't make much money. But then for me and for someone who's, grown up in a council estate and all of my friends are in the same boat, our perception of these politicians is that, they're making so much money. They've all got so much money.
Relative.
They're on their high horse.
It's all relative.
So how is that the case though? How do they have this money if they're not making it from...
Your average MP earns half what your GP earns.
Right.
Far less than a local headmaster earns, just to give you some sense of perspective. No one suggesting MPs don't earn anything. I made that point a moment ago. The idea they're all rich, now it's cobblers. I mean, some come in from wealthy families. A lot come in from wealthy families. The Nick Cleggs, the David Camerons. It's a good hobby job if you've got money already. If you're trying to bring up a large family, as I was, living in the southeast of England on an MP's income, I was MEP, but it was the same salary. It's not huge money.
Well, is it just me?
But I'm not asking.
Them to have...
I'm not asking.
Well, they have some benefits as well, don't they? It's not
lifestyle.
just the income.
No, the lifestyle. Yeah. I mean, as an MEP, chauffeur-driven cars, champagne receptions. Yeah. There's a millionaire's lifestyle without the income.
And I guess it's the status as well, which brings me on something I wanted to touch on, which is I see there's sort of two routes or two reasons that people might want to become in politics. One is status for themselves personally, and one is to actually make a difference.
They are the two types of politician.
And where do most people sit?
The majority, you either want to be something or do something. Most want to be something. And for most, it's a career. Never was for me. I gave a career up to do it. By the way, I'm not asking for sympathy
no.
on the money. I made a choice. If I'd stayed where I was, I'd have been a very rich man. Probably very fat and probably dead. So, I made a choice. But this is the point I'm making. When we make choices in life, there are benefits to the choices. There are also sacrifices as well. And we have to understand that. So I felt unashamed of taking a big check if I'm a celebrity. All right, that was the point I was making.
Is that the part of the problem with the current government, though, if most of the people in power are, they want to make decisions that don't get them in hot water, that are straightforward, they don't want to take any risks, but they're there for the status. They don't really care about what's happening underneath them.
The most important thing to them is getting re-elected. Getting re-elected, keeping the show on the road is the most important thing to them. And that's part of the problem. And I think we do need more conviction politicians, personally.
We could probably go for hours, but I know we've got to wrap up.
Yeah.
One final question.
Yeah.
What does striking it big mean to you?
Striking it big means success. It means doing it. It means getting there. It means having a goal, having ambition and achieving it. And if you strike it big, you say to yourself, you know what, it was worth it. And I remember that morning of the 24th of June, 2016.
It's our birthday.
That's stunning.
Is it?
Yeah, 24th of June.
That stunning, 3:15 in the morning. Despite all the global predictions, despite the bookmakers, despite everything. And it's happened. It's happened. We've rebelled. The British people have told their masters to go somewhere. We voted for Brexit. And I remember the next morning speaking to one of my kids, who probably, to be fair, hadn't seen much of me for 10 years. These are the choices we make and the sacrifices we have to make. And saying to me, well, Daddy, it was all worth it then, wasn't it? Do you know what? That's striking it big.
Awesome. What a great point to end it on.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. If
you guys have enjoyed it, make sure to smash that thumbs up button and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
True GOAT, Nigel. That was sick.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was striking it big. That